what makes someone remarkable? Do you mind being described as the white people whisperer? What is the optimal age to get married?
That year was the first year that we ever heard a teacher talk about race.
Is the college application process fair?
You start to find the non-obvious way kind of works.
Is there like a cartoonist community? So many times when we go live with these things, it's like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, boom.
Boom.
Happy Thursday, Non-Obvious Nation. We are back for a special episode of the Non-Obvious Insight Show, and it is part of our big Non-Obvious Beyond Diversity Summit this week. And if you've been watching any of the other content that's been happening this week, I mean, wow. It has been an absolute joy to put this thing together. We have had amazing people involved in it. And in this show today, I'm going to do something very unusual, which is go behind the scenes of this masterful production and all of the people that did all of the things that made it so amazing. So we have more than 217 speakers. Not all of them are going to join today, but we may have a few of them drop in and out. We have lots of background on what it takes to pull off a virtual event, and we want to answer some of your questions. A lot of us have been going to many of these virtual events. I mean, we've been spending all of our time working remotely, attending some of these things. And maybe you've pulled off a virtual event or two. Maybe you're just doing virtual meetings, but we want to dig into the whole process for this. So we can talk about the live production that's gone into the 54 sessions that we put together. We can talk about how to get your camera looking good and how to get your audio sounding good. We can talk about getting people to come to something. I mean, we can talk about all of the logistics, but we can also talk about the content. And the content at this summit over the last 3 days now, this is day 3 that we're on right now. And we've got one more day of content premiering, a new episode every hour, a new session. And the range of topics that we've been covering at this summit has been unbelievable. I mean, we've talked about building cultural confidence in kids, women in tech, ageism at work, disabilities. We've talked about fitness, health, public health. We talked about casting, Hollywood, comedians. I mean, we have had so many different people from so many different industries, and I just can't wait for you to watch some of that content. And I know, look, I know it's going to take some time because there's a lot of content, and unless you are like total binge watching, which is possible, in which case, like, you had a pretty long 16-hour day yesterday, because like that's how many new segments came out yesterday. But hey, if one of you did watch for 16 hours straight yesterday, like, I want to know, because that is very, very impressive. But you'll probably watch these on demand, and they're all available on YouTube on the same playlist as same account as this show, a playlist for the summit. So like, you can watch them when you have time to watch them. And I highly recommend that you do, because one of the things we did at this summit is we specifically focus not just on the conversation. I mean, I love conversation. Conversation's great. But when it came to this topic of diversity and inclusion, we didn't only want it to focus on the conversation. We also wanted to offer some real practical, actionable tips for people. And so every one of these sessions that you'll watch has a segment where all of the speakers, the experts who are part of the panel, say, here's what I think you should do right now. Everything has that really practical application. And for us, what that meant was that we went beyond diversity. We didn't want it to just be symbolic. I mean, symbolism is important, and we want this to symbolize that we can all come together into an event like this. But we also wanted to demonstrate that this conversation about diversity and inclusion doesn't need to be something that happens in lots of different pockets. We don't need the conversation about bringing more women into technology to happen totally separately than the conversation about what we can learn from disabled leaders. We want this to be a conversation about creating more inclusivity, whether it's at work or in life or in entertainment or in media. I mean, all of these things relate to this one big topic. And that was really important to us. And so that's what we want to dig into. That's what we want to talk about. And we want to go behind the scenes. And I can think of no better way to go behind the scenes than to bring on my co-founder, my awesome producer, and my wife, Chavi. Welcome to the show. This is the first time that you're on the show. This is pretty exciting for me.
Yeah, and nerve-wracking for me.
I think more nerve-wracking for me, because if I screw this up, this is going to be, I will never hear the end of this. So, but look, you've been spending an insane amount of time over the last several weeks producing a lot of the segments that have gone into these. And one of the decisions we made early on was to do these segments as live shows, even though many of them were recorded. And as we did that, there was a lot of work and effort that went into that. So I wonder if you could just take us inside that, talk a little bit about the production and some of the team that we worked with as part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been working and producing on the Non-Obvious Insights show since the pandemic hit. But when we had to produce 50 sessions, I mean, in a short period of time, this could not be done alone. I mean, this was definitely not a solitary effort. So first we had Lindsay Cox. She coordinated all the schedules. She compiled all the bios and the images. Then we had Marnie McMahon and Taylor and Caitlin from the Idea Press team. They helped us edit the videos. They helped with social media. They also used the sync word service to caption all the videos so it was more accessible for the hearing impaired. And then we worked alongside partners such as SRC Partners and Pastamite Media and the FemWard, Ruhi Mirza Pandya, Sandhya Jane Patel, Mahat Shahalui, Monica Simtani, Amy Keene, and she's from DICE, which stands for Diversity and Inclusion at Conferences and Events. So I'm proud to say that we are 100% DICE certified. Now, each of these partners and many others, they helped with cultural production. They reached out to speakers from all of their networks with diverse backgrounds, certainly people that we didn't have access to. And they really, really gave it their all. Because I think most of them have been working in this industry for 20 years or more. They're passionate about making a difference and helping to create a meaningful, actionable change in the world. We also reached out to Digimentors, Sri Srinivasan and Neil Parekh, and they were the ones that helped me figure out this whole StreamYard platform. And
yeah, that's the platform, by the way, we're recording on StreamYard, which allows us to do a lot of the live production. And yeah, they've been great. The partners have been great, and we have some of them here with us, right? We're going to bring them on pretty soon, so we are very excited because it's going to be one of those drop in, drop out types of shows, which we haven't usually done that. So that's going to be a lot of fun too.
Yeah. Should I continue or should we introduce everyone?
No, you should continue. I want you to finish because, you're talking about the people who were involved in the project, and many of them have not been on camera. And so they haven't really gotten the chance to be recognized. And I think that's important. So we're not going to make it one of those long, boring award show type of things, but it is important to recognize that there was a large team. It wasn't a 2-person show.
Right.
It was a minimal male show because I think that probably 90% of our team was female. So I was definitely outnumbered there, but it was a huge team that was working on this.
Yeah. And I have to say, there was one person that was my right hand. She was there literally in the morning, in the evening, at 6 a.m., at 2 a.m. And that was Cameron Bryant Sergio. And the entire Non-Obvious team, they were instrumental. She helped format images and slide that were displayed during the recording. And she also helped to manage a group of interns. So what we did is we reached out to the youth in our community and to volunteer to get involved. We had interns from high school and college, and they were very passionate. They're young activists themselves. And
amazingly passionate. Yeah.
we have a son. He is 16 years old. His name's Rohan. He's a junior in high school. And during the pandemic, it's very difficult for the youth to get internships. And internships, not just, something that they're busy doing, something that they're actually interested in doing, and something they can use for their college applications. And so we invited them, and they came on, and they worked their asses off.
Yeah.
They worked on marketing, production, graphic design, editorial, research. They pulled out quotes from every single recorded session. They gathered social media handles. And Rohit, you could show some of the images that we have.
Okay, I'm on it.
Yes. They reached out to their own communities, colleges and universities. They shared a certificate that we are offering to anyone that has registered for the summit that may need it for professional development. And they did this all while going to school online full time. So thank you, Rohan, Luna, Maya, Meghna, Krisana, Isha, Dia, Manav, and Arya. So although we've been thinking about this entire summit for the past year, we didn't get started until late October. And I encourage that all of you that are watching right now, I need you to go out and create more conversations like these, because if we can do it, so can you.
Yeah, I love that. And look, you've talked about some of the partners, but we have some of them right here. And I want to bring on the first two partners who are actually part of SRC Partners, which is a consulting group that does cultural production. And we've got Ruhi Mirzapandya and Sandhya Jain Patel with us. Welcome to the both of you. Love to see you.
Hi, guys. Thanks so much for having us.
Oh, you're welcome. And look, you have been doing a lot of things with us pretty much from the beginning, and your expertise is cultural production. And for those of you who are watching, who are not familiar with what a cultural producer does, give us the sort of the short version of what is a cultural producer and why does that even matter?
It's important because what a cultural producer does is provide expertise on diversity, equity, and inclusion into whatever product you're making, usually in a storytelling format, to ensure that it reaches the widest audience possible and therefore can have the greatest impact. And that impact is in two ways. First, in the messaging, to make sure that your message goes out as far and widely as possible. And secondly, for a financial aspect, the more people hear your message and the greater the audience that loves your message, the more likely they are to come back to you for additional content. So.
Yeah, I love that. And it was really interesting when we started doing the programming and when we started like figuring out how we were going to put all the different sessions together. We had kind of this opening plan. And then we did like some very visual thinking around it. We created just in terms of the logistics, because I know there's a lot of people watching who are planning their own events and doing their own things. We started with Google Docs. We used those as shared documents. We gave every session a code number, which was hugely important because then we knew like who we were referring to. So like SE1 meant a certain panel because we had like a 2-digit letter code. And that was something I learned actually from, I think South by Southwest did that. And I'm like, oh, that's such a good idea, because like now you don't have to type out the whole name of every session. So like having a shorthand to do that was important. We did a lot of visual things. So like this is one of the visual boards that we use.
Yeah.
And so like we did kind of visualizing of stuff. And all of this was around content development, to just constantly ask this question of who are we not including?
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to a lot of diversity events in particular, one of the things that you see is that they focus on one audience and people get left out. It's amazing. As we came through this conversation, we talked, it was amazing how many people with disabilities said, oh, there's so many diversity conferences and like there's nobody with a disability.
That's right.
That was one audience, right? There's people who talk about ageism. And that's another kind of criteria. And there was not that many people talking about that. There was people talking about neurodiversity. So including people with like Asperger's or autism or ADHD, like, and nobody was talking about that. And so it was so important to bring all of those in. And one of the things that we did is we really acknowledged them. So Sandhya, maybe talk a little bit about the importance of that acknowledgement and that inclusion that we really use throughout the planning of this.
Yes, I mean, I think, kudos to Non-Obvious for taking all of that on board and realizing that we needed to be intentional about reaching so many different kinds of underrepresented communities and to have that representation for all populations. So not only was it diversity that is visible, like race or gender, but also diversity, as you mentioned, with neurodiversity or with other types of issues. And I think one thing that I'm really proud of this conference and what we did was our land acknowledgement at the beginning of nearly all of the panels, where we really took a moment to center ourselves and hopefully our viewers in space and time. So not only was it centering in space, literally in the land of the ancestors of the American Indians who occupied all these various territories that we call home. Well, we are occupying their territories. But also in time, we recognize that everybody is on their journey individually. And we are so grateful and excited to have been able to meet everybody in their own moment in that journey, and hopefully to do the work together. And by no means is this conference the be all end all of that. We all have a ton of work to do, but it's a great space to sort of join together and have a conversation that we can then take away to our communities and to continue to build and do the work together.
Yeah, and that was really, I mean, that was one of the things that we were so excited about that we had included in the conference, because it's one thing to have the land acknowledgement and to acknowledge the native peoples and whose land that we are all existing on. Almost all of the cases stolen land that we're all existing on, and to acknowledge that. But it's another thing to also involve voices from that community in the actual event. And we had many Native American voices participating in different panels. And what we didn't do, which I'm really proud of, is we didn't have the Native American panel where we took all the Native American voices and put them on one panel. No, we had an amazing Native American fitness coach who has run, I think, 26 marathons in 9 days, and he was part of our fitness panel. We had two amazing young women who were running a group called Indigenous CC that were helping to teach Native American youth about their culture, and we had them as part of our cultural heritage panel. So the voices that we did bring in, and that was the same case whether it was people with disabilities or people from marginalized communities, we didn't bring them in and say, okay, here, we're going to stick you on your panel to talk about your thing. We said, you happen to have this background, but you have expertise in what the thing is. And if they are a disability expert, then obviously we're going to talk to them about disability because that's what they've chosen to make their field. But if they happen to have a disability, but they're actually an expert in something else, then we want to talk about that expertise. That's the way that we wanted to think about inclusion, not checking the box to say, oh, we have one person from this background, one person from that background. We want to have people from all the different backgrounds. And I want to bring Maha Chalui into this because Maha, you have been an awesome partner for us in organizing some amazing panels. I mean, we had one panel that was 5 stand-up comedians talking about whether diversity is funny, which is, and they were debating it, which is amazing. You also helped with, organizing, and well Maysoon Zaid, who was our opener yesterday, and you had a nice shout out from her. Talk a little bit about what this experience has been like for you. And you've produced so many different productions. I mean, I guess you could call them like TV, film, theater. I mean, you've worked across many of these different spaces. What was this experience like? And how did you think about it when you started getting involved in doing some of the production and some of the casting?
Sure. So yes, the stand-up comics panel. First of all, getting into this was really exciting to me. I am generally an extrovert, come from a theater background. Collaboration is a big part of who I am. And that had kind of been taken away from me. I took it away from myself. I moved from New York to LA, and then there was a pandemic, which has left us all isolated. And I found myself being pretty resistant to transferring my skills to the online space and more just like wanting to wait it out. So it was a huge sort of surprising relief for me when Ruhi and Sandhya reached out and connected, because it gave me the opportunity to start reaching out to people again. and reminded me what it is to gather, the importance of gathering, the importance of continuing these conversations in shared spaces. So in terms of reaching out to people, my first questions are always why? Why are we coming together? And to what purpose? And Non-Obvious had such a clear vision of, we want these to be quote unquote beyond diversity, which I think a lot of people might think about that in different ways. For me, beyond diversity means beyond representation, beyond just having, a good picture or a good look, but actually having the conversations that drive us closer to equality and justice, right? So, because that's the conversation I'm interested in having, that's how I started thinking, like, okay, these are the folks, these are the panels they're having, who are the folks I know who can talk about these things in passionate ways from that lens.
Yeah, and we did start with that lens, which I think is such an important one, which is we looked at every single panel, every single speaker, and we said, is this something I would want to listen to? Like, is this interesting for me? And that was a really important lens, because what we were trying to engage was our own curiosity. And what I love about this event is that there are so many sessions and so many topics that I just don't know anything about. It's not like, let me find, 20 of Rohit's buddies and, stick them up in an event because I asked them to do me a favor. There are a ton of voices at this summit that I did not know at all. There are some people I had to go and research to identify. There are a few people who saw that the summit was happening. They reached out to us and said, hey, I have a background that I think might fit. And then we went back to them and said, yeah, you'd be perfect. And we involved them. So like this whole thing came together so organically, and the voices came together so organically, in part because of that, and also in part because of just the generosity of everyone that was participating. I mean, as soon as a speaker said yes, the very next thing many of them did is they said, oh, you should be talking to this person and this person and this person.
Yes.
Because they also have amazing backgrounds. And that is such a powerful way to bring people in and to get them involved. I mean, I love that as a way of building this and as a way of just transferring that word of mouth.
Yeah, I think that's super important.
Yeah. So I want to bring Angela into the conversation. Angela Chi, who is an amazing moderator and speaker and author herself, and was one of the moderators of a conversation that we hosted at the summit all about food and how food can help us to think about the world more diversely. So Angela, how are you?
Great. Thanks for having me. I love listening to the conversation and how it all came together. It was an amazing summit.
Yeah, we thought, why not do something kind of transparent, go behind the scenes, answer people's questions, and just give them a sense of like, what does it take to have this type of conversation? Because one of the things that I'm hoping people get from this is that it's one thing to think about diversity and say, oh yeah, I want to have a more diverse and inclusive world. It's another to actually go and like intentionally join or start that conversation and then have it turn into something. And when it comes to turning into something, like I know that one of the things you talked about on the panel that you were part of was just everyone's personal journey towards feeling like they're an inclusive person and the role of food in that. So you're not a food expert. And actually, one of the things I loved about you when we first started talking is you said, look, I love this topic. I can talk about a lot of different things. What do you need? And I said, well, how about food? Like how, and you've been on air, you've been in broadcast, how to do that. And one of the things that we really did quite frequently is we brought in people who had professional media training, many people who do media training and who are experts in this space, because we felt like if we brought in people who knew how to ask questions and we brought in people who were used to being on camera, then we could not only up the level of the show, but also create an inclusive environment for those voices who aren't as appreciated, who don't have as much experience, to feel like there's someone kind of helping them along. And that was like so important.
Well, that's what I loved about your whole process. When I saw what you were doing, the ambitious project, working in Hollywood and working in media before, I have a big picture vision, and also being someone that's always the only, hence my podcast, The Power of the Only. Just like you have a vision and you can see, you're a bridge builder, right? You can see where the gap is and what needs to happen. But I think for a lot of people, they need to see it first. Like when you're putting together events, people are like, well, that's just always the way that it's been done. Or they pick the same speakers, they go to the same topics and they go, oh, diversity is great. Let's put Angela there. And I love how you have a holistic view. And I think moving forward, that's what we need. We need people to have vision. And that's what I try to bring alive in people, the power of the onlys, like people who are thinking the only way. Like they're like, I'm the only one, but there's power in that of creating something new. And then you created it. Like you actually put it together, created it, and you put it out there as a model for people to say, you know what? I can see it differently, because representation, that's what I stand for, is power, presence, and representation. And I think it's so important for people to not only see it and have those conversations started. So I'm so excited of what you've awakened, because people just get stuck in their rut. And moving forward, we need to have these deeper conversations. We need to bring people together. And sometimes people don't know how. And I really love what you guys said about, it's not about, let me take a look at pictures and put in one Chinese person, one Indian person. You really took, and I think sometimes, working in television and working in Hollywood, I mean, that's what people do. They sit in a room and they go, what do we need? And they have the old model of thinking. Whereas I've always shown up as the media communication expert. I've shown up as a speaker. And by the way, I'm Chinese. And if you ask me about Chinese things or my experience or growing up, in America, having mixed race children, all those conversations will come into play. But you hired me as a media communication coach. You hired me as your keynote speaker for inspiration. But just because I'm diverse, it comes into the conversation. So that's what I loved about your whole summit. So thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for saying that. And look, just as a reminder, I mean, I am lucky because I get to be in front of the camera and speaking a lot. And so, I'll probably get more of the credit, way more credit than I deserve, because there was a huge team involved in this. We talked to some of the partners. We've got a whole range of other partners that were helping on every different front when it came to helping to pull this together. We talked to them about just different speakers. We got help with doing the captioning. We got help with our imagery. I mean, there were so many different groups that were part of this, and that was one of the inclusive stories behind it. But I think that what was super powerful about kind of doing this and creating this conversation was we intentionally focused on making it valuable, not just for the speakers, but also, I mean, it's not just for the event organizers and for the partners and for the attendees, but also for the speakers. And so one of the things that we said to the speakers is, look, we're going to get you in touch with one another. And you mentioned kind of bridge building and networking. And like one of the powerful things is we get people together who may not have known each other before, but should know each other. And one of the pieces of feedback that I got throughout this, and that I know Chavi got, and SRC partners and Maha, everybody who was involved, we all got this, was people would show up to a panel about their topic and they would say, oh, how come I didn't know these people who are on the panel with me before? I should know them. And now they do. And I love that, because what it says is, like, we chose people specifically.
Rohit's camera went out for like 5 seconds, and he's going to come back on.
Yeah, sorry, I'm back.
That's what happens in production.
I forgot to reset it. I got so excited. I forgot to reset it.
He wasn't listening.
Yeah, I know. Sorry. See, that's like just bad listening on my part. I should really focus on that. No, I got too excited because, like, look, we were talking about. Yeah, I know. It's like,
I love this, that we can broadcast live on LinkedIn, and it's, my old days of integrating. Now you can do it from home, whereas before it was all in the studio with like, a whole cast
with professionals, with professionals who are handling all the tech, right? Now we're doing it ourselves, and we've become professionals. I mean, Chavi has become a professional over this, and I'm still, struggling with my amateur moments of my camera. But it's okay. Like, we're at home, we're like hanging out together. It's totally informal, right?
But it looks really professional. That's what's merging. It's that you can have that kind of comfort and ease and casualness, but it's still professionally produced. The way she integrated pictures and moving the camera around, we never would have been able to do that. Everyone has access at their fingertips to really produce some really great content. So you guys did a great job.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different views. We can put so many different things up. I mean, images, like lots of stuff. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, what we can do. We're going a little bit too crazy right now. It's like I can't even keep track of it. But like, yeah, but I love it. And I love bringing all these voices together, and it's fantastic. So thank you for being part of the conversation. Thank you for jumping into this. And look, if you're watching this and you're getting a little bit of a sense of the behind the scenes of this summit, you will get a lot more if you go and check out some of the sessions. If you go and watch and read some of the descriptions, look at some of the speakers, and not only watch their sessions, but if you're in a position where you're hosting events, if you're in a position where you're doing things that could potentially bring some of their expertise in, hire them, pay them. One of the things that we decided early on, because of the nature of this event and the fact that it was going to be free, is that we wanted total pay equity across the board. We didn't want to pay some speakers and not others. And since it was a free event, we didn't have much of a budget to work with. And so we relied on the generosity of speakers to jump into this, many of them who get paid quite a lot of money to deliver things like keynotes. And part of the reason that we wanted to do it in that way, but also make a commitment to the speakers, because we wanted to invite as many of the speakers as we could. We wanted to do it as a huge event, but we wanted to shine a spotlight on these voices, because a lot of times, look, I spent a lot of time working in events. We've pulled off events. I've been a speaker at many events. Before the pandemic, I was traveling to 50 events a year. I know events really well. And one of the things you hear over and over again from people who organize them is, oh, we'd like to have more diversity to the stage, but there just aren't any diverse speakers on those topics. And one of our hopes is, by looking at the talent that's involved in this summit, no one ever says that again. There's no reason to say that. And I think that the challenge to find diverse speakers is a challenge. It's not just a simple Google search. You do need to do some work. But if we can bring all these amazing voices together in one place, perhaps we can give you a one-stop shop for finding a lot of those speakers, for getting introduced to their content by seeing what they speak about. And then you can go off and take the budget that you've got allocated and spend it to hire some of these people to either do speaking or coaching or consulting, or maybe you might be able to hire them. Not that, I mean, I think everybody who was part of the summit is in hot demand. So I don't think anybody's like looking for a role, but even if they weren't, think about what you can do to help them, to help bring them in. So that's kind of my final piece. I know we want to close, so maybe we can just bring everybody back on and do kind of a very quick like farewell moment. Oh, and we got Monica. Hey, how are you?
Yes.
So Monica, I want to introduce you because you moderated several sessions. You are the host and founder of The Fem Word, which is an amazing show. Oh, there you go with your background. Like, look at this.
Oh,
You are like total branded. I love that. As a branding guy, I'm like total respect right there. That is good stuff. And your show is phenomenal. And I am probably not even the target audience, and I love it because I'm not
on a show. So
yeah, yeah, that's why I only watch shows that I've been on. That's it. But to be fair, I was only on it because of Chubby. I was her plus one because you actually interviewed her and I tagged along. So I don't know that counts, but you were kind enough to let me do it. But you were involved in many of the different sessions. You interviewed some real kind of thought leaders and speakers. I mean, just share a little bit about your perspective when you've been involved in this and what it's meant for you.
yeah, I mean, I think for me, the main thing is, you say it so well that you're bringing together people from all different sectors into one summit, which is, for me, I've never seen that before happen in one place. But for me, it was the openness of the conversations. People didn't hold back, not only about their experience, but what they think that needs to be done in terms of actionable items. And I think that that's more of what we need to do. I mean, we can talk the talk, but what about doing it and implementing it? And walk the walk. So that was my favorite part, I think.
Yeah, it's you're right. I mean, walking the walk is so important, and I know that maybe this show has felt a little bit too much like a victory lap, and I don't want to do that because there is more that we could do. I mean, there are things that we wanted to happen in the summit that we didn't quite manage to have happen. For example, I mean, I would have loved to have more voices that were not American. It was quite an American summit in the sense of like most of the speakers, even if they have a background from somewhere else, like they live in America now. And I would love for that to shift, for example. So, I mean, there is more we could do.
One of my panels did have 2 people from London, actually, from England. So that was great.
We did. I mean, it's not like we didn't have anybody from outside of America, but we could have done more to get those voices in. And so there's always room for improvement, right? And I think that's important to acknowledge, because in the spirit of transparency, like, we're showing you what it took to pull this off. We're taking you behind the scenes on some of these. And I think we have to be candid also about like where we fell short. Like, there are some groups, you might look at the list of speakers and say, look, you don't have enough representation of the group that I am part of, or the group that I care about, or there's an amazing speaker on this topic, I can't believe you didn't include her, right? I mean, people may have that reaction, and I get it. You know, it's a constant process, and already I've been connected with and had conversations with people who I'm in my head, I'm like, oh, you know, if we only met a little earlier, like, so of course we're going to have those, but like, we can't continually, like, everybody on the team would absolutely kill me if I tried to add more stuff to what we've been doing. I've already done that way too many times.
In my experience now, having done this, there are people now reaching out to me on LinkedIn saying, hey, I'm in this space. Hey, this is what I'm doing. And so that just means that we can continue this conversation and maybe, Rohit, do this again.
Yeah, people are asking. I think we'll need to take a break in between, but look, there's many more things to come. I mean, one of the things that we are very excited about that's coming out of this summit, to the point of kind of actionable items, is we're going to be taking all of the best insights from the speakers that have been shared during the summit, and we're producing a book. And the book is going to be called Beyond Diversity, and it's going to take a lot of these lessons and it's going to divide them into themes. And if you've looked at the agenda, you know that there's sort of 16 macro themes across the entire event. And the book is meant to bring out some of those lessons and to really try and sort of make it real for people and say to them that here are what the insights said, and here's some actionable things you can do. And in a book format, it allows us to reach an even broader audience, because it's not 50 hours of content that you have to watch, which is a lot of content. I get that. It's a book that then can be used for curriculum. It can be used inside of corporate organizations. And so we're super excited about the book in particular. And I would just issue an open plea out there. Invitation, I guess, is a better word than plea. If you're part of an organization where you think that the book like this could help and drive the conversation further, if you have something that you'd like to add, if you just want to get involved, like, get in touch with us and let us know. Because one of the things we don't want to happen is when the last day of the summit happens tomorrow, we don't want the conversation to end. And, you know, look, maybe we'll do this again. Maybe it was a one-time summit. We're not sure about that yet, but it's definitely not a one-time conversation. It's something that needs to continue, that will continue. And hopefully through this process, we can open enough connections and open enough people's minds that does happen without us. We don't need to be involved in all of the conversations. We want you to connect with one another. That's what's super valuable and important about this. So that's pretty much what I have. I want to leave it to all of you to just, I'm going to say thank you for joining me as part of the show. This has been phenomenal. I don't know, Chubby, did I forget something? You're the boss. Did I leave anything out?
I want to say a big thank you to Chubby.
Yeah.
Standing ovation.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, sitting ovation is what we should do now for the pandemic. Like, we're ovationing, but we're just doing it like seated. But it doesn't mean that it's not, you know, that we don't heartfelt believe it, because we do. So yes, thank you. And thank you to Beyond Us who are here, who are able to kind of take the bow. We're taking it on behalf of so many others who have agreed to be part of the summit, who've been working in the background on the summit, and who really helped to make this thing a reality. And so for all of their work, I want to say thank you. And I'll just close out by reminding everyone, you can watch all of the sessions on demand at nonobviousdiversity.com. You can get the links to everything there. Be part of the conversation. Use the hashtag nonobviousdiversity. This is such an important event. We are so honored to have hosted it, and there's more to come with it. So check out the videos, be part of the conversation, and just reminding you to always stay non-obvious.